The Charlotte Hornets are quietly building something special. This previous season, the Charlotte Hornets were one of the more disappointing teams in the NBA, as their star player Lamelo Ball ended up going down with a season-ending injury relatively early on into the season, and in part due to that, the Hornets were one of the worst teams in the NBA. But although things didn't go their way last year, I like a lot of the moves that the Hornets were able to make during this offseason. And due to that, I actually think the Hornets are quietly building something special in Charlotte. But quickly, before we get the video started, for those of you who may not know, I'm Juicy Sports. I make opinionated NBA content, and if you guys enjoy videos similar to this, hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that post notification bell. I also want to quickly mention that I recently started up an MMA channel, and if you guys are interested in that, the link will be in the description. But anyways, let's get into it. Over the last couple seasons, the Charlotte Hornets were known as a pretty young and fun team out there. They weren't necessarily one of the better teams in the NBA, and they clearly weren't a championship contender, but when you looked at their roster, they did have a lot of nice young talented players like Lamelo Ball, Miles Bridges, PJ Washington, Cody Martin. There was just so many different guys on the roster that were seen as young and talented players that had a pretty good future going forward as well. And as time was progressing, it was pretty clear that a lot of these young guys were actually getting better individually, and in turn the Hornets as an organization were also becoming a better team out there. A lot of those younger guys were not only understanding the NBA game a little bit better, but they were also becoming a lot more efficient and effective out there. But unfortunately, after having some progression for a lot of these young players, this previous season everything just completely fell off a cliff. As I mentioned before, their main star Lamelo Ball ended up going down with a season-ending injury, and a lot of their other guys ended up getting hurt as well this previous year. And for a lot of rebuilding organizations, once you show some progression, but the next season following that, you completely fall off a cliff, a lot of those teams and a lot of those younger players could completely lose confidence. But in my opinion, when you look at what the Charlotte Hornets not only already have on the roster, but were able to do during this previous offseason, I actually still do think they're building something special in Charlotte. But the question at this point is, why do I feel that way? Why do I still at this point feel, after an abysmal season last year, that the Hornets are still building something special in Charlotte? Now, the first and most obvious reason has to be the return of Lamelo Ball. Obviously, as I mentioned before, the Hornets didn't play well whatsoever last year, and a huge reason for why that was, in my opinion at least, has to be the loss of Lamelo Ball for the most part of last season. And yeah, you could make the argument that some of their other guys were injured as well, some of their other guys also just didn't have good seasons whatsoever, but I think it's pretty clear that the main reason for why the Hornets didn't play well last year was due to the loss of Lamelo Ball. Because when you look at Lamelo Ball's game, he's a really special talent out there. He not only makes you better with his scoring ability, where he can do a great job at that from that three-point range, from that mid-range, and even driving all the way to the basket and being pretty efficient and effective with it, but he also has a tremendous ability to run an NBA offense and get everybody easy looks out there. And something that I mentioned in a lot of my videos is just having a guy out there that can not only run an NBA offense at a high level, but specifically get wide open looks for a lot of your guys, just of course makes everybody's lives out there easier, and in turn makes everybody play better. So I think the return of Lamelo Ball this next season for Charlotte is not only going to be great for them due to the fact that they just got an extremely talented individual offensive player, but they also got a guy who's going to make everybody around him better as well. But the next reason for why I actually think the Hornets are building something special was due to their draft selection and Brandon Miller. Now, at the time of the draft, a lot of people were upset that the Hornets ended up drafting Miller, as they thought there were more talented guys that they should have drafted that were still on the board. But when you look at what Brandon Miller is able to do, and when you also think about the fact that you added a player like that and put him alongside a player like Lamelo Ball, I actually do really like the fit and the connection between those two guys and the overall future of the team due to that. Because when you look at Brandon Miller's game, it's pretty clear that he has a lot of very good attributes for any team in the NBA, but especially for a team that has Lamelo Ball on it. Just due to the fact that Brandon does a really nice job at spreading the court and hitting a high percentage of catch and shoot threes, but he also has a nice ability to create for himself as well, whether you talk about the one dribble pull-up, even at times driving all the way to the basket, and he even has a pretty nice ability to facilitate out there as well. So at times, if the Hornets are giving Lamelo Ball a break, they can have Brandon Miller out there and and he can do a decent job at facilitating for his teammates out there as well. But even besides that, a huge reason for why, in my opinion, that the Hornets decided to draft him was due to his defensive versatility. He's a guy that can defend a lot of different positions out there and do a pretty good job at that as well, and having a player like that on your roster just makes everybody else's lives easier. Because now, for example, if you have a specific guy in your roster who isn't really all that great of a defender, Brandon Miller could just do a nice job at helping that guy out, whether you talk about sending double teams or whether you talk about just taking that person's defender as a whole. So I definitely do think the addition of Brandon Miller is a good one for any roster, as I mentioned, but especially a team like the Charlotte Hornets, who do have some holes on the roster that Brandon does help fill. Now, the next reason for why I think the Hornets are still building something special in Charlotte is due to the fact that they have Miles Bridges. Now, Miles Bridges has been a guy who's been in the NBA for a decent amount of time, but when you look at his progression over the last couple seasons, it's really been a significant progression for him. As during the 2021-2022 season, Miles ended up having the best season of his career by far, averaging 20 points per game on 7 boards and also adding 3.8 assists. And when you talk about a young player like Miles that has been a pretty solid player throughout his young NBA career so far, but had such a breakout season during the 2022 year, that's obviously a younger player that you're going to want to hold on to. Miles Bridges is a guy who's clearly extremely athletic. He does a great job once driving all the way to the basket, at dunking over players, or even finishing around them with crafty layups, either his left or right hand. But besides that, Miles has done a really nice job at adding a 3-point jump shot and also a mid-range jump shot to his game as well. As for example, from that 3-point range, Miles does a really nice job at hitting that wide open catch and shoot 3-point jump shot, which is something that he's going to get a lot more of playing alongside with Lamelo Ball this upcoming year, but he also does a really nice job at getting off that 3-point look and getting to wide open one dribble pull-ups from that mid-range area as well, or driving all the way to the basket. At this point, due to the fact that Miles has added a pretty nice jump shot to his game, I just think that completes his game and makes him a much more dangerous offensive player out there. But besides that, Miles does some nice things defensively as well, does a pretty nice job on the boards as well, and I just think he's a really talented and is becoming a much more complete player overall from top to bottom. And as I mentioned before, he still is a younger player, so you would only expect him to improve his game as the seasons do progress. So overall, I do think there are a lot of reasons to be very excited about the Charlotte Hornets, not only this upcoming season, but also in the long-term future, for a lot of the reasons that I mentioned in this video, alongside with the fact that they also drafted a pretty talented player in Mark Williams early on in the draft this previous year as well. But I guess only time will tell what does end up happening for the Hornets, not only this upcoming season, but also in the long-term future as well. But I will say I am extremely excited, and I do think they are building something special in Charlotte. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you think the Charlotte Hornets are building something special, or do you not think so? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, check one of these 2 videos popping up now, and until the next time, peace out guys.